In the heart of a dark forest, a man staggered, his body torn and bleeding. His eyes, wide with terror, caught the moonlight as he collapsed, gasping for breath. This was no ordinary forest. It was the Forest of Arden, a place where reality and illusion blurred, and where the blood that was spilling on the ground held secrets and stories of its own. The Forest of Arden, with its dense trees and whispering winds, was a stage for many tales, but none as captivating as the one Shakespeare wove in his play, As You Like It. This play, more than any other, delved into the heart of what it means to play, to perform, and to be part of a larger drama that is life itself. From the very opening, the play introduces us to Orlando, a young man who feels trapped by his lack of means and education. His frustration is not just about his material circumstances, but about his inability to make an entrance that befits his noble lineage. Every arrival, every exit, every moment of being seen is a performance, and Orlando's struggle to find his place is a metaphor for the challenges we all face in making our mark in the world. Love, too, is a form of performance in As You Like It. Rosalind, the play's central character, takes on the role of Ganymede, a young man, and uses this disguise to explore different facets of her personality and her feelings for Orlando. Her playful interactions with Orlando, where she pretends to be in love and then pulls back, are a series of experiments in how to be and how to be seen. Love in this play is not just a matter of the heart, but a dance of appearances and expectations. The forest itself becomes a stage where these performances unfold. Celia and Rosalind, when they first arrive, find themselves caught in a moment of uncertainty, searching for a topic to start their scene. Their banter about fortune and nature, though seemingly aimless, is a way of passing time and finding their footing in this new world. When Touchstone, the court fool, enters, he provides a welcome distraction, and the scene shifts, as it often does in the play, from one form of play to another. Throughout As You Like It, the characters are constantly reminding us of the nature of play and performance. Orlando's awkward attempts to speak to Rosalind, Phoebe's confusion when she meets Ganymede, and even Touchstone's improvised verses, all highlight the challenges and joys of being on stage. The play also includes moments of what we might call actors' nightmares, like the sudden loss of words or the need to fill time with a song, which serve to remind us of the artificiality of the theatrical experience. But the play does not just play with the notion of performance for its own sake. It uses these moments to explore deeper themes. The famous monologue by Jax, All the World's a Stage, encapsulates this idea, suggesting that life itself is a series of roles we perform. From the infant to the old man, each stage of life is a part we play, and each role comes with its own set of entrances and exits. The play also delves into the complexities of gender, with Rosalind's disguise as Ganymede allowing her to explore the fluidity of identity. Her interactions with Orlando and others reveal how much of our gender is a performance, a set of behaviors and expectations that we adopt and sometimes subvert. In the end, As You Like It is a celebration of play, not just as a form of entertainment, but as a fundamental part of human experience. The characters, the forest, and the play itself all conspire to create a world where the boundaries between reality and performance are constantly blurred, and where the act of playing is both a challenge and a source of joy. Rosalind's epilogue, where she directly addresses the audience and invites them to join in the play, is a final reminder that the magic of the theater lies in our willingness to enter into the world of make-believe, to explore the many roles we can play, and to find in them a reflection of our own lives. Shakespeare, the renowned playwright of the Elizabethan and Jacobean era, had a unique connection to the late medieval mystery plays. These plays, which were performed on special religious days, often featured biblical stories and moral lessons. They were a significant part of the cultural fabric in Shakespeare's time, even though they had largely disappeared by the time he was writing his plays. Despite this, Shakespeare seems to have had a deep understanding of the mystery plays, which is evident in the many references he makes to them in his works. These references suggest that he not only knew the plays, but also assumed his audience would recognize them, indicating a broader cultural memory of the mystery theater. One of the most famous references to the mystery plays in Shakespeare's works is in Hamlet, where the protagonist advises a group of actors. He warns them against overacting, saying, "I would have such a fellow whipped for ordoing termagant, it out Herod's Herod, 3.2, 13-14. This line alludes to the over-the-top performances of Herod in the mystery plays, where he was often depicted as a raging, violent character. The reference is not just a casual comparison, but hints at a deeper familiarity with the dramatic traditions of the time. Another example is found in Hamlet, when Claudius, feeling remorse for his brother's murder, says, "Oh, my offense is rank, it smells to heaven. It hath the primal eldest curse upon't, a brother's murder." 3.3, 36-8. This line evokes the biblical story of Cain and Abel, but it goes beyond a simple biblical reference. The image of the smoke of Cain's sacrifice, spreading over the audience, is a visual detail that is more likely to come from the mystery plays, where such scenes were vividly performed. In 3 Henry VI, there is a reference to Judas greeting Christ with "All Hail," 5.7, 34, a detail not found in the New Testament but present in the Chester mystery play. Similarly, in Richard II, Adam is described as a gardener, a role he plays in the mystery cycles. In The Merry Wives of Windsor, Falstaff is called a Herod of Jewry, 2.1, 20, and in the same play, Master Slender is described as having a cane-colored beard, 1.4, 22, another reference to the mystery plays. Shakespeare's use of these references is not just a nod to the past, but a way of enriching his plays with a layer of meaning that his audience would have understood. The mystery plays were a part of the cultural heritage that many Londoners, especially those from rural areas, brought with them to the city. These plays had a strong presence in towns like Coventry, which was only about 13 miles from Shakespeare's hometown of Stratford-upon-Avon. This proximity suggests that Shakespeare could have easily seen these performances during his youth. The mystery plays were not just static, outdated performances, but a living tradition that evolved over time. They continued to be performed well into the 16th century, even as they faced opposition from religious and state authorities who deemed them idolatrous. The plays were a form of total theater, offering a rich, immersive experience that combined drama, music, and visual spectacle. They provided a model for the freedom and flexibility that characterized early modern theater, including the ability to represent a wide range of places and times, the mingling of different social classes, and the use of prologues, epilogues, and choric figures. The blood and violence depicted in the mystery plays were particularly striking. The Passion of Christ, a central theme in these plays, was often portrayed with graphic detail, including the scourging, crucifixion, and death of Jesus. In the York Cycle, the Butchers' Guild was responsible for the death of Christ, and they used animal blood to make the scenes more realistic. In the Chester Cycle, Christ's wounds continued to bleed even after his resurrection, and in the Last Judgment, he appears with fresh blood flowing from his wounds, symbolizing his authority to judge humanity. The realism of these performances, with their use of stage blood and violent scenes, laid the groundwork for the more graphic and intense plays of the Elizabethan and Jacobean stages. Shakespeare, drawing on this tradition, brought a depth of understanding and a richness of detail to his works that resonated with his audience and contributed to his enduring legacy. In Shakespeare's plays, blood often flows as a powerful symbol, and nowhere is this more evident than in 3 Henry VI. The play opens with the York faction displaying bloody swords and the severed head of the Duke of Somerset, setting the tone for the ruthless violence of the Civil War. But the most striking scenes of bloodshed involve the innocent. Early in the play, the child Earl of Rutland is captured by Bloody Clifford. Despite the child's pleas that he is innocent and had nothing to do with Clifford's father's death, Clifford brutally slays him. Clifford then displays Rutland's blood on his sword, vowing to take revenge on York, the real killer of his father. This scene is a stark example of the senseless violence that characterizes the Civil War, where even the innocent are not spared. Later, Queen Margaret mockingly gives York, Rutland's father, a napkin stained with his son's blood, like the veil of Veronica. York, in a moment of tragic irony, suggests that if Margaret tells the story correctly, it will make the audience shed tears, much like the mystery plays where the sight of innocent blood evoked pity and sorrow. Near the end of the play, the young Prince Edward is brutally stabbed by the Yorkist King Edward and his brothers, Clarence and Richard. Richard, in a chilling moment, then goes on to kill the saintly King Henry. He mockingly asks if the blood of the Lancastrians will sink into the ground, and displays the blood on his sword as purple tears, a grim echo of the innocent blood shed earlier. In these scenes, blood becomes a symbol of intense suffering and the futility of revenge. The political factions may shift, but the blood of the innocent remains a constant reminder of the tragic consequences of civil war. In Julius Caesar, blood also takes on a complex and unstable meaning. After the assassination of Caesar, Brutus and the conspirators bathed their hands and swords in Caesar's blood, a scene not found in Plutarch, Shakespeare's source. Brutus wants to present this act as a sacrifice for the greater good, a way to free Rome from tyranny. However, Mark Antony, in his famous speech, reinterprets the blood as a sign of Caesar's sacredness and the conspirators as butchers. He prophesies a future where the blood shed by the conspirators will lead to more bloodshed and suffering. The ghost of Caesar, appearing to Brutus, adds another layer of meaning. Though the ghost never physically reappears, its presence is felt in the blood of Brutus and Cassius, who both die in the final battle. Their blood seems to be a response to the blood of Caesar, suggesting a cycle of violence that cannot be broken. In King Lear, the most painful scene of bloodshed is the blinding of Gloucester. Bound to a chair, Gloucester is taunted and then brutally blinded, evoking images of Christ's suffering in the mystery plays. The blood flowing from Gloucester's eyes is a powerful symbol of the cruelty and suffering in the play, resonating with the medieval imagery of Christ's passion. Finally, in Macbeth, blood is a constant presence, often spilling from the innocent. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are covered in the blood of King Duncan, and Banquo's blood appears on the face of the first murderer. The ghost of Banquo, with gory locks, haunts Macbeth, symbolizing the judgment that follows their crimes. Macbeth becomes obsessed with blood, recognizing that blood will have blood. His descent into madness and tyranny is marked by the blood he sheds, and the blood that judges him. Through these scenes, Shakespeare explores the deep and often ambiguous significance of blood, using it to evoke pity, judgment, and the tragic consequences of human actions. The idea of blood and violence on the stage during the early modern period, particularly in the plays of Shakespeare, is deeply rooted in the traditions of medieval theater. Medieval mystery plays often featured graphic depictions of blood and violence, whether in the stories of martyrs or in biblical narratives. These elements provided a foundation that later playwrights, including Shakespeare, drew upon, even if they did not directly copy the earlier works. Shakespeare's use of blood is complex and multifaceted. It is not always a literal part of the stagecraft, but often serves as a powerful symbol. For example, in Julius Caesar, the blood of the assassinated Caesar becomes a sign that the conspirators cannot control. Despite their attempts to justify the murder, the blood marks them as butchers rather than liberators. Antony's attempt to sanctify Caesar's blood as a symbol of martyrdom fails to convince, and the image of blood becomes a harbinger of civil war and continued violence. In Macbeth, the blood of Duncan and Banquo takes on a life of its own, escaping Macbeth's efforts to minimize its significance. The ghost of Banquo, marked by blood, haunts Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, leading to their downfall. The blood in the play is not just a physical presence, but a moral and psychological burden that they cannot escape. The representation of blood on the early modern stage was often realistic, using animal blood to achieve a visceral effect. This realism was important, as it heightened the impact of the violence and made it more affecting for the audience. However, there were practical concerns, such as the risk of soiling valuable costumes, which influenced how blood was used. For instance, in scenes where blood was particularly prominent, characters might wear simpler, easily washable garments. The use of blood and violence on stage was not limited to Shakespeare. Other playwrights like Marlowe also incorporated these elements, drawing on the same medieval traditions. In Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, for example, the image of Christ's blood streaming in the sky is a powerful symbol of divine judgment and redemption. The medieval tradition of place-and-scaffold staging, where the stage was divided into multiple areas representing different locations, provided a precursor to the Elizabethan discovery space. In medieval plays, curtains were used to hide and reveal characters, much like the discovery space in Elizabethan theaters. The discovery space behind the tiring house wall allowed for the surprising appearance of characters, often at crucial moments in the play. One example of the evolution from medieval to Elizabethan staging can be seen in John Heywood's The Play of the Weather. This play required a structure for the god Jupiter to be visible at certain times and hidden at others. The use of a curtain structure or trone to achieve this effect is similar to the discovery space in Elizabethan theaters. However, the medieval structure was more about keeping a character out of view while they listened to others, whereas the Elizabethan discovery space was often used for dramatic revelations. The continuity between medieval and Elizabethan staging is evident in many aspects, from the use of curtains to the physical layout of the stage. The Elizabethan discovery space, with its doors and curtains, allowed for a more dynamic and flexible form of staging, building on the traditions of medieval theater. This evolution reflects the ongoing development of theatrical techniques, and the ways in which playwrights and performers adapted to new audiences and venues. The hall and the booth stage were also important in this evolution. Halls, often used for court performances and touring shows, had curtains across the screen doors, which could have served as a precursor to the tiring house wall. The booth stage, a simple structure with a curtain to hide the players, was another early form of staging that influenced the development of more complex theatrical spaces. In plays like The Pride of Life and The Castle of Perseverance, the use of curtains and enclosed structures is evident. These plays show how medieval staging techniques, such as the use of scaffolds and curtains, provided a foundation for the more elaborate stages of the Elizabethan period. The curtained booth in The Pride of Life, for example, allowed for the king to be hidden and revealed, much like the discovery space in later theaters. Overall, the use of blood and violence, as well as the evolution of staging techniques, demonstrates a rich continuity between medieval and early modern theater. This continuity is not just a matter of physical structures, but also of the symbolic and dramatic potential of these elements, which Shakespeare and his contemporaries harnessed to create powerful and enduring works of drama. The use of scaffolds and curtains in medieval and early modern theater played a crucial role in how stories were told and characters were presented. In plays like The Castle of Perseverance, scaffolds were more than just platforms. They were symbolic stages that represented the moral and spiritual journeys of the characters. Each major character, such as the world, the flesh, and the devil, had their own scaffold, which they occupied when they spoke, and vanished from the audience's mind when they were silent. This method allowed the audience to understand the character's influence on the protagonist, humanum genus mankind, as he moved from one scaffold to another, symbolizing his moral choices. The medieval mystery cycles, such as those performed in York and Norwich, also used decorative hangings called costers to decorate the sides and back of the wagons, but these were not functional curtains that could open and close. However, the end-town plays, performed in a place and scaffold format, introduced a new element, the use of curtains to create moments of discovery. For example, in The Last Supper, a curtain would suddenly open to reveal Christ and his disciples, creating a sense of surprise and immediacy. As the court theater of the early 16th century began to experiment with these techniques, the use of curtains became more sophisticated. King Henry VIII, known for his love of surprise, used curtains to create dramatic entrances and revelation. One notable example was the Golden Arbor pageant, where a large curtain was lifted to reveal a lavish stage set. This practice evolved into the Elizabethan discovery, where characters or scenes were hidden behind curtains and revealed at key moments. The concept of the traverse, a term used in Godly Queen Hester, describes a structure that allowed characters to move offstage while remaining technically on stage. This idea, though not entirely new, was a continuation of earlier practices seen in plays like The Pride of Life. The traverse could be a freestanding prop, similar to the curtained thrones and beds used in earlier plays, rather than a fixed structure against a wall. The construction of fixed playhouses in the late 16th century, such as the Swan and the Globe, brought new possibilities for stage design. Props like rocks, cages, and tents became common, and curtains were used to enhance the dramatic effect. Despite the lack of visible curtains in the famous DeWitt sketch of the Swan, historical records and stage directions confirm that curtains were indeed used in these venues. The use of curtains in Elizabethan playhouses varied, and their arrangement depended on the specific playhouse. Some curtains were likely used to cover stage doors, creating what we now call the discovery space. This space allowed for the sudden revelation of characters or scenes, adding to the drama and suspense. However, some evidence suggests that larger, freestanding structures, like the one described in To Tamburlaine, were also used to create more elaborate discoveries. In summary, the evolution of scaffolds and curtains from medieval to Elizabethan theater shows a continuous development in stagecraft. These elements allowed for more dynamic and engaging performances, enhancing the audience's experience by creating moments of surprise, symbolism, and dramatic revelation. The techniques and props used in these plays laid the groundwork for the sophisticated stage designs and theatrical effects that would become hallmarks of later theatrical tradition.